worst fears came true. He was shot in a drive-by shooting, laying in the middle of the street in the dark of night, thinking his life was over. A policeman came up and started helping him. While he was rendering first aid, this officer started speaking life into the young man. He told him sternly, "Don't you die. You have a destiny to fulfill. God's hand is on your life. This is not the end." I saw a lady that was fighting cancer. She and her husband are very good people. For years, she's been the one helping others, always had a smile, an encouraging word. The last few months, she'd been in the hospital, very sick from the treatment. Her hair was gone. She was very thin. She told how she always quoted scripture, prayed and believed, but she got to where she was so weak, she couldn't do it. She felt badly about it, like she didn't have enough faith. She was very honest. She said, "God, if I have to quote these scriptures and pray for my healing, then I'm not going to make it. I don't have the strength." She was looking out the window. There was this big, white, puffy cloud. She heard God speak to her, not out loud, but down in her spirit. He said, "You don't have to pray. That cloud you're looking at, it's full of all the prayers from your friends and family that have gone up for you." When she heard that, she felt a release, like she could relax. She knew she had friends that were fighting for her. And sometimes you need borrowed faith. When you're too discouraged, too tired, been through too much, that's okay. God will have friends with faith that are there for you. Someone to call you to let you know that they're praying. Someone to come visit you with an encouraging word. Someone to go to God on your behalf. Their prayers will touch heaven for you. Now, I don't know if you need a friend today. You feel like you don't have faith for yourself, or God has you hearing this to remind you to be a friend with faith. To not just have faith for yourself, but let someone borrow your faith. Reach out to that coworker that's discouraged. Go visit that neighbor that went through a loss. Maybe it's a relative. They've given up on their dreams. They've seen doors closed. Now they don't believe anymore. God is counting on you to be a friend with faith. Step in and believe for them while they can't believe. You rise higher. When you help that neighbor that's down, you visit that coworker in the hospital, you mentor that young man that's lonely, when you let others borrow your faith, there's no limit to how high God will take you. A good friend of mine has been very successful, very respected and influential. He's in the ministry, but he made some poor choices. He got in trouble and everything came crashing down. A true friend doesn't run away when someone fails, they run to the person. Your friends don't need you as much when everything is going great. They're seeing dreams come to pass, success, celebrate with them. That's exciting. But when they really need you is when things aren't so great. They've made some mistakes. Life has thrown them a curve. The medical report wasn't good. When their faith is low, that's when you can make the biggest difference. They need some borrowed faith. They need you to believe for them while they can't believe. They need you to speak victory while they're too discouraged. I had been checking on him every several weeks, trying to encourage him. And this one day, some negative things had just come out, and it wasn't good at all. I knew I needed to call. In this very weak, faint voice, he answered, "Hello," just barely above a whisper. I'll never forget what he said. "Joel, I don't have any more fight left in me." This was a man that had traveled the world, preached to thousands, spoken faith to people, but now there was no zeal, no passion. And I did what I'm asking you to do. I said, "Don't worry, you may not have the faith, but I've got you covered. I have faith for you. I'm going to be praying for you. I'm going to be speaking victory. I'm going to be reminding God what He promised." The line went silent. I could tell he was weeping. God has blessed you with faith. Why don't you let someone borrow your faith? You're good at praying for your dreams. Take the next step. Pray for someone that it was permanent. But even though this man didn't have any faith, he had 4 friends that thought otherwise. Jesus had come into the city and was teaching at Peter's house. These friends had heard about the miracles he had done, how he'd healed a man with leprosy and caused a crippled man to walk. They said to the man, "We're going to take you to see Jesus." They were saying, in effect, "You may not think it can happen, but we believe you're going to walk. We believe that being paralyzed is not your destiny." The man didn't have any faith, but he had 4 friends with faith. Their attitude was, "You can borrow our faith. We're going to believe for you while you don't believe." These four friends put him on a stretcher and started carrying him to see Jesus. It wasn't next door, it was across town. I can imagine the men getting tired, their shoulders hurting. It was hot, dusty, but they're not about to quit. They have a made-up mind, not for themselves, but for their friend. My prayer, God give us friends like that. Friends that love us so much that they'll make sacrifices. They'll go the extra mile. They'll let us borrow their faith when ours is low. They'll lift us when we feel paralyzed. And there are a lot of ways to be paralyzed. Paralyzed with an addiction. Paralyzed with depression, anxiety. Paralyzed by the past. Mistakes, hurts, disappointments. Because you're a friend with faith, because you help others, God is going to put people in your life that won't let you stay paralyzed. Even when you think it's permanent, someone is going to be there to help you move forward. These four friends finally made it to the house where Jesus was teaching, and they were so relieved. Now they could rest. The problem was the place was packed. No way to get in. They could have turned around, said to the man, "Too bad. We did our best. Sorry, brother, we love you. It's just not meant to be." But these men were not going to take no for an answer. They said, "We can't get through the door. No problem. We're going through the roof." These friends had ripping off the roof faith. I love the fact that it wasn't for themselves. Nothing wrong if it was, but they weren't doing it for their dreams, for their healing, for their promotion. They were doing it for a friend in need, a friend that didn't have the faith, a friend that was convinced he had reached his limits. God in His great plan ordained that this man would have friends with faith. God has put people in your life strategically. He's ordered your steps so you can be a friend with faith. Don't miss the opportunity. Don't be so busy with your needs, your dreams, your goals that you miss carrying someone to their healing, praying for that friend that's hurting, lifting that coworker that's discouraged. Let them borrow your faith while they don't have any faith. Anytime you help others, that's a seed you're sowing that's going to come back to you. You make sacrifices to help that friend that's down, give them a ride, visit them in the hospital, take them food. That's going to come back to you. But here's the key, not in the same measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. When you help others, the scripture says you are lending to the Lord and He will repay you. Sometimes we're looking for a miracle, but if you'll become a miracle, then God will show out in your life. These four men carried the paralyzed man onto the roof. They tore a hole in it. While Jesus was in the middle of speaking, dust starts falling, parts of the ceiling, all this noise. They let the man down, set him right in front of Jesus. The scripture says, when Jesus saw their faith, not the faith of the paralyzed man, he was just lying there. When he saw the faith, then helping someone else rise higher. There was a young African-American teenager being raised by a single mother. They lived in a rough neighborhood in Los Angeles, gangs all around, crime, shootings. He was constantly afraid, always looking over his shoulder, knowing that his life was in danger. He didn't have really a dream to do anything great. His dream was to simply survive. At 16 years old, his worst fears came true. He was shot in a drive-by shooting, laying in the middle of the street in the dark of night, thinking his life was over. A policeman came up and started helping him. While he was rendering first aid, this officer started speaking life into the young man. He told him sternly, "Don't you die. You have a destiny to fulfill. God's hand is on your life. This is not the end." Everything in the young man's mind said it was over. He was done. But in his spirit, something came alive. He didn't believe it in his thinking, but as he heard this officer keep speaking it, it went beyond his mind, down into his heart. Hope started to rise up. He couldn't fight for himself, but this officer was fighting for him. The interesting thing is the officer didn't know if the young man was wrong, if it was his own fault, if he was causing the trouble. He chose not to judge him in that moment, not to condemn him, but to have faith for him. The officer could have been passive, jaded, big deal, another shooting, happens every night. He's probably getting what he deserves, but he took time to care. He understood that when others don't have faith, he can have faith for them. He can let them borrow his faith, faith to bring healing, faith to give another chance, faith to help the hurting, faith to love those that were wounded. By the grace of God, this 16-year-old boy survived. He beat the odds, Today, my friend Teray Roberts is the pastor of a great church in Los Angeles, an entrepreneur, a great leader. 20 years later, this police officer that helped save his life became a member of Teray's church. But I wonder where he would be without this officer. When God saw the faith of this policeman speaking to Teray's destiny, telling him what he could become, declaring favor, healing, purpose over his life, like the 4 friends that carried the paralyzed man. Maybe that's why Teray is doing great things. You have incredible power. Your faith